let's work our way through the complications so we can all keep our pledges. Not to, this cannot be violated. I've told my constituents it will not be. So,
and we agree with that and would like to work with
All right.
I'll look forward to that list. Thank you.
Senator Daines is next.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Secretary Yellen, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Secretary Yellen, the president's budget included $4.7 trillion with a T in total tax hikes, including $1.8 trillion in new taxes on Main Street businesses. The president's budget also includes a shadow tax increase on small businesses in Montana and across the country by remaining absolutely silent on the future of the 20% pass-through business tax deduction. We must remind ourselves that 95% of the businesses in the United States of America are pass-throughs. They're not C-Corps. And yet this budget was silent on a 20% tax increase coming for many small businesses in the course of 2026. I'm planning to reintroduce my Main Street Tax Certainty Act in the coming weeks, which would protect these businesses from this shadow tax hike by making this important deduction permanent. With the president's pledge in mind, will you commit to making the 199A deduction permanent?
I mean, all I can really say is that the president has pledged not to raise taxes on individuals or small businesses making under $400,000, but no promises with respect beyond that.
Okay, I'll take that as a no and move on to my next question. Senator Young raised this issue of Pillar 2 of the OECD proposal, which you spearheaded and have championed. It's littered with these complex rules that would benefit state-owned enterprises at the expense of capitalist competitors. Why are you a proponent for a framework that would allow China to tax American companies? And I understand this. I was involved in global operations for most of my 20-year career in the private sector. Tax companies on their American operations if they fall below the minimum tax threshold, even if they fall below the threshold by utilizing the bipartisan tax incentives such as the R&D tax credit.
So the agreement does permit, it includes an under-tax payments rule by which other countries can exercise their rights to impose taxes on operations of foreign countries.
Which would include China.
That don't abide by the 15% tax. The United States can impose a top-up tax to ensure that those revenues end up in the U.S. Treasury instead of in a foreign country.
I move on to child tax credits. As you know, Secretary Yellen, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act doubled the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000 and increased refundability threshold to $1,400. I was certainly disappointed at the time that all of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle opposed this change and made it impossible to make it permanent, but I am glad that we enacted as Republicans into law. The president's budget proposes increasing the child tax credit from the current $2,000 to $3,600. It makes it fully refundable and delivered on a monthly basis. However, I see they didn't make that change permanent. It expires in 25, even though there's no limitations in a presidential budget to do so. My question be this: does the president believe that the child tax credit should be made permanent for $3,600? And if so, are you willing to then eliminate the SALT deduction, which overwhelmingly benefits the wealthy, to give working families an expanded child tax credit that importantly never ends?
So the president is very supportive of the child tax credit, proposes to continue it for several years until many of the provisions in the individual income tax from TCJA expire that affect exemptions in the child tax credit, and then there'll need to be
Right.
consideration of what to do as those.
But won't make that provision permanent, is what you're saying. That would, the budget says it's going to expire in '25.
That's because there needs to be a broader consideration.
Doesn't have to, though. You could put the child tax credit there and make that permanent. So we could
Well,
debate the tax cuts,
He's
but
very supportive of it, and we would look to work with you to
The time of
make
the
sure that
gentleman's
it's.
expired.
it's
Senator
in-
Cantwell is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Yellen, thank you so much for not just today, but over the weekend and the much attention you've given to this issue. It really does impact small businesses, and while the